Hello, I'm Dr. Catherine Horton. So after the announcement of the bounty hunt, and after telling you what has been happening the last couple of weeks, I would like to continue giving you information about what is happening to me, because it actually is very, very important for all those investigators. Essentially, as I'm speaking now, my head is being hurt again. As far as I can tell, so in the past, victims who have been targeted the last 10 years, 15 years, they found chips in themselves. So these chips are emitting a certain frequency. There were scanning sessions where people discovered their particular frequency. So suddenly, you could measure frequency from their arm or, their legs, even their head. And there are chips that were implanted essentially on top of their head and other things. So these things we already know. And from what's interesting is that the exact frequency that is a chip is emitting on is essentially a licensed frequency. It's a band. And if you can measure the frequency precisely, you know who has licensed that band, so who is licensed to actually broadcast on that frequency. And you can find out who owns the chip and who is farming your data. But essentially the realities we're waking up to is essentially that there has been a big Nazi takeover through the intelligence agencies. Yes, they are running death camps. They are just running them silently. And yes, they are continuing Nazi experiments. So in a sense, the Nazis were never defeated. Never. And there's a reason for that. It's because at the end of the war, essentially what the Nazi takeover is, it's a takeover by psychopaths, by a bunch of utterly whacked out degenerates. That's why they start running around killing and thinking that's a good thing. They go on about super races and racial purity, of course, thinking they themselves are the absolute best thing. Now that's a God complex. That's essentially, thinking that there's something better, being a super race. That is classical psychopaths. So they look at everybody else as objects, but they themselves, of course, are very, very important, right? So this is it. So a Nazi takeover, and by the way, the communist takeover was pretty much the same thing, because you had exactly the same ingredients. You had a bunch of people who thought that they were better than everybody else, going around murdering everyone else. Now that's very psychopathic. So the psychopathic systems of communism and Nazism are identical. And again, the system of capitalism, in a sense, also ends up to be exactly the same, because you have extremely rich people thinking that they are above everybody else, going around murdering everybody else. So that seems to be a recurring theme. And when you just analyze it as a physicist, you realize it doesn't matter what these, mad people call their system. It doesn't matter if they call it communism or capitalism, or if they call it Nazism. At the end of the day, there will be these pyramidal hierarchies, always. The organigrams, in communism and in modern corporations look the same. It just looks the same. The Nazis had exactly the same sort of alignment or organization. And as soon as you've got a pyramid organization, you will end up with deep capture by psychopaths, and then a layer of absolute total morons who are placed there by the psychopaths as a buffer against any potential competitors. So this is why it always ended up to be the same. So the real problem, as Dr. Paul Marko rightly also pointed out, is actually the structure. And I totally agree, because these pyramids are essentially psychopath magnets. They attract psychopaths at the top, and the end result is always deep capture by psychopaths. So that's what we have. When you have compartmentalization, not just here, but in, detailed departments here, and there, you end up basically with a system that can never actually recover from deep capture. It cannot, especially when there's external secrecy and compartmentalization inside. Essentially, you will end up having built a deep capture machine. So intelligence agencies are deep capture machines. The Nazi ideology is very attractive to psychopaths. Psychopaths will rise to the top. Therefore, the intelligence agencies, one always ends up with a Nazi ideology. And because the intelligence agencies also tend to grow together internationally, and I'll explain why. It just so follows that as soon as you have intelligence agencies, you will end up with a global Nazi takeover. Surprise, surprise! And that's what we have, okay? That's what we're dealing with. It's now bloody urgent, because just like the Nazis, these psychopaths with exactly the same Nazi ideology, they just call it slightly different. Now they call it transhumanism, and they call it this and that. Doesn't matter, it's the same bloody Nazi ideology, where they think they're so much better, and they start around maiming and murdering everybody else. But just like in the communist takeover, just like in the Nazi takeover, and just like now in the psychopath takeover, you have to act quickly to stomp it out. Otherwise you end up in a world war. Because the world wars are the ultimate racket. They are the ultimate human maiming, murdering fest that all these psychopaths get off on. Right? So that's what they want. They want a maiming and murdering fest. I mean, one should also say that they are not geniuses. You know, at the end of the day, they are there where they are because they are fucked in the head, right? Not because they're mathematical geniuses. So when they have to, they're not going to spot mathematical or systems tendencies that maybe indicate that having a world war is a bad idea. These people essentially just run amok, right? And at the very top, they've been at the top with no one actually cutting them down for so long. They have God complexes. That's pretty bad, because people with God complexes don't really take in data that well. So that's what we're suffering from. We essentially had already millennia of degenerate psychopaths at the top running amok. And we have it again. Why? Because we never changed the structures. We still have intelligence agencies, and so therefore we have the same problem. So why do intelligence agencies grow together internationally? Well, for the simple reason that the very first task of an intelligence agency is to, you know, protect themselves against infiltration. Therefore, they will start fearing and watching other intelligence agencies. And to find out what those other intelligence agencies are doing, they'll try to infiltrate, okay? And then they will place their people. If this is one intelligence agency, these people will put their people there. These people will put their people there. And it will go on and on and on. There will be a continuous, you know, first clandestine mixing of people conning each other and bullshitting each other. But at the end of the day, you know, there will be employees from company X or intelligence agency X in intelligence agency Y, and vice versa. Right? So this mixing will continue. And then there's another thing, which is intelligence agents are encouraged to marry other agents from a foreign power. That's ancient, right? Because then you essentially have two birds with one stone, right? So these people will start sleeping with each other, and then they'll have families, and then they'll think, fuck the agencies, we're now a family, yada 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 yada. And before you know it, you basically have just big families. You know, all these agencies just become one big happy family. So there's the intelligence agencies all together as a big happy family, and everybody else can go and screw themselves. That's the end result. And that's what we have today, surprise, surprise. So we have an inner cartel of total degenerate psychopaths with a Nazi ideology and close family ties to a bunch of other degenerate Nazi psychopaths and other intelligence agencies running amok, thinking, screw everybody else. Now, that's not the best basis to build a stable society, because remember, the reason why they're at the top is because they're fucking psychopaths. And the reason why the people below are where they are is because they have control files on them. Typically very horrific control files to be particularly strong. So, for example, pedophilia, necrophilia, and being a serial killer would presumably also produce a pretty good control file. This is why, when you have these scandals breaking, for example, Jimmy Savile, it turns out, oh, he was a pedophile. Oh, he was also really big into necrophilia. Oh, and he was a serial killer. Well, surprise, surprise. You know? And that's what we're dealing with, okay? So when you have these utterly whacked out people running the show, they're going to run it into the ground, and that's what we have now. So we have to stop them, and we need absolutely everybody on board. We need investigators and so on. And that's not even all, right? These Nazis and these psychopaths just want to do what they are doing, and they also want to one-up each other, okay? So they want to keep one-upping each other. And that's why you have all this, like, if you ever followed the Pizzagate, which I encourage you to do, but you know, I warn you, you will have to have the stomach to do it. You have these utterly, totally, you know, fuck clean in the head kill fests by a bunch of pathetic wankers. Totally, utterly bizarre. If you're normal in the head, you know, like you're in category A, there's absolutely no way you can possibly understand how this can come about, right? But to actually understand what's happening, right, you have to move through the layer of the weaponized morons and understand the very top, which is essentially psychopaths, right, having a wank, okay? And they will, once they've done it like a dozen times, they want to have something harder and harder and harder. And just like pedophile rings, who are essentially seeking out ever harder porn to satisfy themselves, that's what psychopaths do as well, right? So once they rape children, they also want to rape children and maim children. When they've been maiming children for some time and it's boring, they want to maim children and then murder children, and it goes on and on and on. And then they want to torture them and maim them and murder them, and it's like, it just never stops. And it's like a competition between them, who is more fucked in the head, because that's the only competitive advantage. So there we are, okay? So this is now the groundwork. We have intelligence agencies that are grown together, as you would expect, right? They are a happy family with a bunch of totally fucked in the head people at the top, right? With a bunch of serial killers, pedophiles, and people into necrophilia, one layer down, and any other totally unsavory, unacceptable thing you can think of, right? But these days, just taking drugs, going to prostitutes and being gay just doesn't cut it anymore, right? Because that's not really an issue. So that's not going to be a control file, a valid control file these days. So you have to have some sort of control file to make it up into this level. So just being gay on its own will not be a control file for most cases. There has to be something else, right? Otherwise they wouldn't promote people like that, because they wouldn't feel like, oh, we can control them. Okay, and that's another thing about psychopaths. They love control, and because they don't understand how normal people operate, they just don't understand normal decency, you know. So just being a decent guy is not going to reassure a psychopath that you're going to always do his bidding. He needs something else. So psychopaths typically only understand coercion and fear, you know, in the limited range where they do feel fear, you know. So they feel thrill most of the time, right, and risks, but sometimes they realize the risks are too big, so they kind of tone down a bit. But that's the only way they can actually operate, and that's the only thing they understand. So that's the only way they will generate control files at the top. So this is what we have: total psychopaths, people with serious control files and being psychopaths, and then an absolute layer of weaponized morons, and then normal people with corrupted people, you know, intermixed. So this is what our societies look like, this is what the intelligence agencies look like. And now we have to do something about it, because these totally whacked in the head psychopaths are running around murdering people and maiming people. And essentially it falls into category C, okay? So if you want to understand what the hell is going on with the victims of the intelligence agencies, you must not approach it with common sense. You must not approach it expecting something normal that you can understand, right? If it were normal, it would not be high up in an intelligence agency. Do you understand? So brace yourself, please, and expect the most utterly fucked in the head, whacked out, psychopathic nonsense that a psychopath would get off on. Okay? This is how to understand the victims of the intelligence agencies. Typically, people just approach it intuitively and think, ooh, you know, people just breaking into your home and cutting up your good clothes and just going and killing your pets, that just doesn't make any sense, so it can't happen. Yeah, in normal world it doesn't happen, but normal world is like out here and maybe in small pockets in a deep captured system like the intelligence agencies. Normal is most likely nowhere here. Okay? So any decision taken here, here, or even by corrupt elements, will not be normal. So do not expect to find anything normal. Do you understand? So what should we expect? Well, we should expect anything that psychopaths can get off on. Psychopaths love humiliation. Psychopaths love to just maim, mutilate, destroy, degrade. And this is why, if you don't believe me, that the intelligence agencies are in deep capture by psychopaths and are utterly, totally psychopathic systems, well, look at the Snowden leaks. Look at what that uncovered about GCHQ, having literally group meetings about their, 4Ds or 5Ds or whatever the hell it was. And what were those 4 and 5Ds? It was like, deny, degrade, destroy, and da. Really? We need an intelligence agency for that? Out of all things? Wow. Normal it is not. Having literally group meetings where you've got presentations going like, yeah, we need 4Ds. We need to build software to deny, degrade, destroy. Hey, really? I mean, when you've got terrorists, why piss around? If you know that they're terrorists, arrest them. End of story. You don't need the 4Ds and funky software, frameworks of squeaky dolphin or I don't know what, like, squeaky hedgehog and shit like that. You don't. You just do the data analysis. If you think it's a terrorist, go and arrest them. Go and nab them. So where does this come from, the 4Ds about, we need special software to specifically deny, degrade and, destroy? Huh? Well, it's not normal. There are some weaponized morons in it for sure, but what's the overall program? Well, the overall program is a psychopath yanking one off. Do you understand now? If you're normal in the head, the leaks, the Snowden leaks about GCHQ don't make any fucking sense. They don't, on no level. If you think about it for longer than 3 seconds, you realize, even if you want to stop terrorists, it doesn't make any pissing bit of sense. Okay, you can deny and degrade the operations, but you know what? Are you going to do it until the end of their days, or are you just going to be done with it? Move on to the next job. So you don't need it if it was a normal operation, a normal agency, but it's not. It's an agency that's in deep capture by psychopaths. So psychopaths want to have a wank. And that's, sorry about the wording, but I want to steer in absolute total contempt and total disrespectfulness into this, because this is all bullshit. We're talking about bullshit, and I'm really angry. I have to talk about bullshit because I want to talk about the serious stuff here and here, and I'm still here. We're talking about corruption, and that's all. This is the empire of bullshit here. This is the empire of bullshit extending into finance, right? Empire of bullshit. So no respect to these cycles. So when you have psychopaths, what they like is deny, degrade, and watch, and keep watching, and keep yanking one off, okay? That's, if they could have that as their job, they would be so happy. And that's what they do, right? That's why they have got all these shit programs, and, as William Binney said, he even came up with a motto for these agencies, keep the problem going so the money keeps flowing. That's right. They just want to have a day job. They're not problem solvers. And anybody actually solving a problem will be, gotten rid of as quickly as possible, because if you solve a problem, you lose money. So you lose your day job, and you might actually have to get a real job, or might actually have to work hard. But they don't want to work hard. It's essentially the best way to imagine intelligence agencies. It's like having a guy on benefits who likes to watch porn. So if you tell him, look, you have to get a real job and you can't watch any porn between 9 and 5, of course he's going to get upset, right? And he'll do anything to go back to his cushy old, time of just literally being on benefits, which is essentially the free money coming in, and just yanking one off on work time. So how do they do that? Well, if you're psychopathic, you like to humiliate people, degrade people. So if you're in GCHQ, you're going to have your deny, degrade, and oh God, I can't remember the, D's. But literally, you're just going to somehow denigrate, degrade something, and then watch people struggle and think, chuckle to yourself. It's absolutely, you have to see these gang stalkers to realize for how long dumb people can amuse themselves with that. Okay, now if you're higher up psychopaths, you have to be slightly more intelligent. So essentially, the sophistication of the mutilation and denigration and humiliation will just increase in complexity. And essentially the difference between a dude down here and a dude down there is just the sophistication of the wank, if you want to put it like that. Okay? So this will be really fucking dumb yanking off, and that will be like, you know, some sort of super fancy wank. And that's what we expect, okay? And I do mean these words because that's what it is. At the heart, this is exactly what it is. It's people having thrills, feeling better about themselves, right? Making their knob feel bigger. And that's the intelligence agencies for you in a nutshell. So that's what we're looking for. Okay. So this is now the actual framework for all the investigators who are looking for stuff, because the absolute worst thing you can do is be a sane person and approach it with a normal mindset. The normal mindset already stops at this level and is already rarefied in a deep captured system. Okay, there might be some people who are still normal in the head, and yes, there might be some, you know, maybe entire departments here where everyone miraculously is totally normal in the head, right? But those things in a deep captured system will be little pockets in seas of corrupt morons and total psychopaths. It's the same everywhere. You can pick banking, you can pick the insurance industry, you can pick the military, you can pick the intelligence agencies. It's going to be the same, because the laws of physics say that this is how it has to be, right, with time. So any system that's around long enough will undergo deep capture by the most ruthless people who are the most striving to the top, which is by definition psychopaths. They will by definition take morons as a buffer to keep everybody down. So this is the end result. So do not approach it expecting normality. Do not approach it expecting normality. Okay? Here, expect a bunch of really corrupt idiots. Here, on this level, expect a bunch of weaponized idiots. Weaponized. They are dangerous. These people are dumb and harmless. These people are dangerous and stupid. And their stupidity makes them even more dangerous, because if you're normal in the head, these people will not behave the way you expect them to. Because sometimes they're so freaking stupid, they'll do something that's against their own best interest. And it's pretty random because they're stupid. There's no strategy behind it. So trying to model idiots is extremely hard because it's freaking random, right? Like you can never quite get it right, gauging their stupidity, right? You don't really know what they can actually process in their head and what they can't. So trying to that they are like, you know, out of control in a sense. So good luck trying to simulate this level here, you know. On this level, these people are intelligent, very predictable, and very ruthless. That's all. It's just the ruthlessness, but they're highly intelligent. They will, most of the time, you know, actually act in their own best interest, having a good, solid analysis of the situation. So this bit you can actually, I think, fairly easily predict. This bit, best of luck, and here is just annoying. Okay, so this is, as we're going through the levels, this is what we expect. Okay, and all investigators have to know this, because when you're listening, it starts already with the actual victim testimonies. Okay, when they come and they talk about what the intelligence agencies do to them. If you expect normality, you will think that's the most nonsensical, crazy stuff I've ever heard. Yeah. But these people don't complain about being assaulted by a normal system, right? If, say, British Telecom did that to them, you know, they broke in and they ripped up their clothes, that would be strange. If MI5 does that, that's not strange at all. It's actually a standard operating procedure. Do you understand the difference? Okay. So listening to victim reports, the one thing I hear over and over, and it has happened to me over and over, is that people come in and try to destroy anything that's you love, anything that's pretty. So for example, in my case, I have a favorite jumper I say to my husband, oh, I really like this jumper. Hey, look, I really like the way, the color and the way it's shaped. What happens? We come back and, oh, there's a big fat hole cut into my jumper. Because they listen to every word I say, and if they have these little fucked in their head degenerates who have to go in and they're like, some senior psychopath told me to just be all satanic and evil, and she said she really likes that jumper, so let's just destroy the jumper. Okay, so that's classic, fucking moron. Okay, that's standard. If you have furniture that you really like, they'll come and destroy the furniture. For example, Melanie Richan had a beautiful wooden panelled floor, so they take up floor panels and they make the nails stick out so that she scratches her foot and, on the nails and stuff like that. Now, how frickin' stupid is that? Okay? With me, they come in, cut up the clothes, etc., etc. They come in, they poison your food, and yada, yada, yada. That is standard. It's like intelligence agency 101. So because I actually live next to a, trainee deji training hub, I do get a lot of people just coming in and taking stuff and then putting it back, cutting stuff up and stuff like that. Like literally, the intelligence agency, because the people they recruit are vegetables. So they have to teach them how to go into a flat and cut up clothes. Okay? That's just how it is. Wow. But that's how it is. Okay, so that's how you actually listen to victim reports. And then, when it gets one step up, right, the weaponized morons, they will be actually coming in and harming a victim's life, So, for example, weaponized morons are honeypots, totally stupid bitches, not realizing that they actually screw themselves by, say, taking out a human rights activist, right? But anyway, they get paid, and hey, they are pretty and they're appreciated, and yay, what a wonderful, day job when you're a slapper. Now that's a weaponized moron, because they are totally stupid, they're totally counterproductive, sometimes for their own situation, and yet they are deadly. They can destroy projects. Now those are the weaponized morons, and we know that MI5 are running honeypots. And actually, so if you read MI5 and MI6 Exposed, there's a report of essentially trainee, I think MI6 agents or MI5 agents, pretty much the same thing, being murdered because they were too ugly to be run as prostitutes. That's exactly what you would expect, because the people up here are total psychopaths. They just want this layer to be honeypots. Okay, so if it's a woman, she has to look like a slapper. If she's not slapper grade, she's gonna get bumped off. Okay, so from the systems analysis alone, when you read this, well, sounds whacked out, but this is exactly what I would expect. When you approach it and you think normality, you would think, yeah, but why would a superior murder their junior just because they're not pretty? Surely they could be given another job. Yeah, but the point is that the guys here also want just knob titillation, so they want pretty women. They also don't want the competition, so better not have a pretty woman who actually's got brains in MI5. I mean, that would be like kryptonite. So you can't have it, so you're gonna just bump them off. And because you're psycho, you don't give a shit, so you're gonna just bump them off. It's the easiest thing. Okay, so it's crass. That's not me. This is not how I would do it. I am firmly in this category, right? But I'm also not in here. I'm really out at the mercy of this system. So as we're moving forward, okay, now let's move one level up to proper psychopathology with control files. Now, what to expect there? Well, you would expect, because of the control files, an utter inability to snap the hell out of it. Okay, so these guys will just keep going, and this is why I'm saying arresting these people is the goal, but it might not be possible because they literally will not stop because of the control files. So if you want to cycle a system fast, it might just be the case that you just literally have to assassinate them. sorry, that's just how it is. I would not ever say, oh, well, you know, the way to cycle a company is to assassinate the CEO. No. But when it's the intelligence agencies, you know, high up, a really thick layer of assassins and serial killers, well, they're not going to stop. They're not going to listen to anything. And you can check that because I put out 6 public appeals to cease and desist to MI5 and the BND. And these people keep mutilating me harder and harder. So, they're not going to stop unless someone blows their fucking brain out. Okay? Because they're literally like zombies. You know? They're not going to stop. That's my honest opinion. I'm not saying someone go and please blow their brains out. I say, please someone go and arrest them and court-martial them, or just, you know, lock them up forever for crimes against humanity and high treason. That's where I'm coming from. But I think there's a pretty big fat chance that that's not going to be fast enough. And in that case, should these utter total nutjobs kick off World War III, right? Which totally suits their psychopathology because it's one big kill fest and they can all compete on how many people they manage to kill, right? As the ultimate competition and one-upmanship. If it comes to that, you really have to blow their fucking brains out because they're not going to stop, okay? Because they're a bunch of fucking psychopaths. So it's like you can talk to Fred and Rose West that they stop raping and murdering children, but I don't think they can stop themselves. So you either lock them up or, right, you get them underground. You know, not into an underground base, but 12 feet underground. That's the sad truth, right? That's the sad truth. And this is how we are different from normality, right? In normal life, I would say rule of law, you know, court cases, civilized approach. When we're talking deep capture of nation states, there is no time. And there might not be a mechanism because the judiciary has been captured by these psychopaths. Okay? And when it's about World War III and killing everybody, it's really urgent. And if you like, the same system's tendency is there everywhere around the world. So in Russia, in China, Latin America, Europe, US, it's the same because it's the same structure. Now, what's really important now for the next 5 to 10 years is that the superpowers keep a level head and recycle the system as calmly as possible and as close to the Carnot efficiency so that everybody, all stakeholders, get the maximum out of it. And it's the physical limit of the benefit that they can get out of it. Everybody involved in a sustainable manner, because then everybody is happy. That's how you can cycle a system, okay? And from Russia to China to Washington, everybody can agree that's beneficial to everybody. There's no way to get more out of it if you stick to the Carnot cycle, the most efficient way to actually turn this super complex engine. Right? And there is such a thing. There is a Carnot cycle even in complex human systems. Like there's in absolutely every engineering, you know, engine. So that's what we need now. Okay? But for that, you have to get rid of all the clinical psychopaths who are trying to just kill everybody else. So if I were right, and this timing, the situation would be highly urgent, and the intelligence agencies would be in deep capture and would be holding everybody back from focusing on the really important issues, right, by being stuck here, well, then you would expect statistically that at some point people will try to dismantle the intelligence agencies and maybe even kill heads of intelligence agencies. And that's precisely what you see now. Okay? You've got, on one hand, Donald Trump trying to dismantle the deep state, and if the deep state has their head screwed on, they'll let just that happen quickly. Quickly, because we're playing on time here. If they don't, then there's the alternative China, where they just executed the head of intelligence. Right? That's what we see. So I'm not making this up. This is why we're seeing what we're seeing. This is why Donald Trump really needs to tackle the deep state, like right now, ideally by yesterday. And alternatively, you've got the very, very quiet, very calm Chinese way of dealing with problems, right? Where they probably didn't see another solution. Boom. Okay? So, I'm just saying, the European intelligence agencies better help us as quickly as possible because we don't have time. Okay, but we have to prepare for the fact that we can talk to them, but they might be literally just too permanently damaged in the head to actually listen. Okay, and then other measures have to be taken, and that's the job of the military. It's actually the job of the military to avoid World War III, because it would be the military who would be slaughtered in World War III. Like, totally, So, if you don't fancy pointless deaths and you're in the military, you have to exert overbearing pressure on the intelligence agencies, having your gun ready, with one hand on the gun, symbolically, to make sure that this actually happens. And why do we have to avoid World War III? Simply because the most important system here, the ecosystems, they cannot survive a World War III. They are collapsing already. We need to repair that, not screw it even harder, because then none of us will survive. Because they are coupled nonlinear systems, okay? And yes, sure, bacteria and bugs and things like that will survive, for sure, and maybe the odd raccoon, but try living off raccoons, So, this is important. That's the most important thing. That's required to rescue that. This has to be cycled and so on, right? This has to be cycled to be able to get on, repair this. And this has to be gotten rid of, the directed energy weapons, to be able to cycle finance and cycle the economy and so on. But we're stuck here, so, okay. Whew. So now you understand. And now a bit more information, because we're still in the bounty hunt. So I'm just preparing all these investigators for what to expect, to find. If you don't believe me, please just look at Pizzagate, because Pizzagate is essentially pushing up past the level of weaponized morons to the layer of psychopaths with control files. So what you expect to find there are the remaining forbidden things, so pedophilia, serial killings, and necrophilia. And that's what you find. That's what you find in Pizzagate. It's essentially psychopaths on this level one-upping each other of who is more sick in their head, as a sort of like street cred, street credibility amongst their homies, if you like. It's literally that basic, but So if you have, at the management level where you've got all these weaponized morons, you've got people competing of who's got the bigger car, on this level, it's people competing on who's killed more children. It really is that sick. So when you are investigating Pizzagate, that's what you brace yourself for. And that's what you'll find. Okay. So we're now talking about the intelligence agencies, so we're solidly in this, this level here. There's a level above them, right, which is related to finance, because the intelligence agencies are owned by the people who can afford to buy them, right, which I don't have to tell you who that is, right? So we're here, and these people are running death camp experiments. So what do you expect? Just going around killing people will not satisfy that, because these people are serial killers anyway, right? When you've got senior people in MI5 and MI6, they're assassins, okay? So just killing people is their freaking day job. So that's not going to be like the most mind-blowing thing that they can do. So what you expect is to just mutilate people in ever fancier ways and killing them in ever fancier ways. Okay, so that's what we expect to find. So if you now go around and you look at past whistleblowers who've died, past critics of organized crime who died, you will see this, right? Okay, there will be some heart attacks. There'll be also, some people who died in car crashes, were found hanging off bridges in London, and, blah, 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 but then it gets, funkier. So you've got fancy poisons, and this and that, and then you've got things where, you know, several things interact. So you've got combination poison, so you give people, you know, one thing that on itself is not going to kill them, but combined with another compound, that's going to kill them. Why is that psychopathic ranking? Well, because it's like, haha, it's even more control, you know. It's like, I poison you once, and then I pick when you die. You know, it's just like, it's like literally like Austin Powers, if you see that film, you know, it's like the kid saying, Dad, we could just shoot him in the head. And the dad, being a real, you know, messed up psychopath, is like, ooh, no, we'll have sharks with lasers. It's like that, okay? That's essentially it. And by the way, if you haven't seen the film Austin Powers because you think it's a comedy or parody and you find it just too sickeningly gormless, I agree with that assessment. But if you watch it under the light of, this is a documentary about MI6, it's perfect. It's like the best documentary of MI6 I've ever seen. So please watch it under that light. So, when we're now talking about this, if you listen to the victims, what you'll hear is that people who are victims of voice to skull, that's the fancy intercom system, which, you know, can be done using, I think, called the Fry effect, so microwave hearing. So with a microwave beam, you can actually make people's, you can essentially send sound into people's heads, you know, and they'll hear it, not really using their ears, you know. And through that, you can make people, I think, hear sound even if their hearing is damaged and stuff like that, okay. So, but then how do they use voice to skull? Well, it's to humiliate people. So racial minorities get a lot of racial abuse, women get a lot of sexual abuse, and this voice to skull is just never ending. Oh, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna mutilate you, look how we're mutilating you. But, you know, they do get off on that sort of stuff. So when you have somebody who's a victim of voice to skull, you know, if they come to you and they say, oh, I hear voices in my head, you're like, okay, the key question is, what are they telling you? If they say, oh, well, you know, it's angels saying that I'm so wonderful and I should just go out and, you know, do all these wonderful things, those people are fucked in the head. They're proper nuts. If they come to you and you ask them, so what sort of stuff do you hear? What do the voices in your head say? And they say, well, it's a lot of like sexual abuse. And if it's a black lady, she'll be like, well, you know, it's all just about me being black and essentially, you know, being called nasty things and so on. Then you know, okay, it's the intelligence agencies using voice to skull. That's essentially the thing, you know. Similarly, if the voices say, oh, go out and kill somebody, it's most likely the intelligence agencies, you know. And then you can assess, well, you know, who are you going to kill? You know, is it a politician? Okay, then it's the intelligence agencies. Is it a business person? Okay, then it's the intelligence agencies. Is it just your girlfriend? Well, then have a look at what that girlfriend's function might be, you know, and then you know, oh, it's the intelligence agencies. So this is how you can tell these days, right? But any people hearing voices of encouraging angels, they should really go and see their psychiatrist because, you know, they are mentally ill, but maybe it's also kind of like a nice mental illness to have, you know, having all these like positive words beamed to you. But I've never met a victim of an intelligence agency who has ever heard like one positive sentence over voice to skull. It just doesn't happen. Why? Because these people are total psychopaths and they just want to get off. Okay, so that's what they do. So that's just the voice to skull department. Then the gang stalking I already explained with the break-ins, and also the gang stalking, they're just trying to denigrate you. But frankly, all these people who are hoofing around outside, they are like the lowest of the low. You won't have a self-respecting psychopath, you know, spending, unless he's really got this like pervy thing, you know, and maybe some, I don't know, nostalgia for his olden days starting at MI5 and MI6. You won't really have him, because typically it is a him, you know. Just doing that as a hobby, really. They typically have some like fancier version, you know, of perving on people, but it will be the same, you know. So the gang stalkers are essentially the lowest of the low. They're a bunch of idiots, and yes, they are wielding directed energy weapons. I think they're kind of small and compact and can really hurt you. Just like your microwave emitter is actually very small in your microwave, you know, you can put it in a handbag and really hurt somebody. Don't try this at home because you'll kill yourself. And you know, those people are essentially just like, yeah, they do what dumb people do. They kind of take intelligent people, take civilized people, or well-dressed people, or well-articulated people, and try to, like, you know, get them down to their totally you know, proletarian level. And that's what you see with the gang stalkers. That's what everybody observed. You basically have proles being proles, you know, having been empowered by a bunch of weaponized morons above them. Okay, now in Oxford, I saw these guys, the people at the lowest level, because of the expansion of the intelligence agencies, are teenagers and people in their early 20s. So MI5 after 2003, I think, doubled in budget, tripled in headcount, and went up by a factor 5 for operations. So they're doing 5 times as much bullcrap as they did before. Now that's the only thing, by the way, that's in a Guardian article. I'm not making this shit up, okay? So that already tells you, oh wow, the UK is undergoing a takedown operation. There is no country on planet Earth that can withstand the intelligence agencies, you know, doing 5 times as much bullshit as they did before, right? It's just not possible. It wasn't possible in the communist system. Wasn't possible in Latin America or in Asia. It's just not possible. Okay, so the UK is now being torn apart by a bunch of weaponized idiots in MI5, and that much I can guarantee. Right? It's just systems physics. So, but anyway, you have those. So the lowest level, because of this rapid expansion, are essentially people who were free to be hooked up into this rapid expansion. So there you expect a bunch of totally gormless teenagers doing bullcrap. The senior handlers, or slightly more senior handlers, they're kind of in for the long perv, you know, and that's my experience. So when I was stalked in Oxford by men in their 50s to 70s, it was really, you know, they're like, they've done the job, they don't need to practice, they're just in. It's essentially like being on Facebook, you know, spying on others. It's like a porn pervy version of Facebook, and they kind of like it, and they waste a lot of time doing that. That's how you can imagine, you know, what to expect there. So essentially what I also found is that the intelligence agencies, to keep essentially, you know, it's kind of like, probably kind of like a work bonus, a bonus scheme, you know. If you're a handler and you're particularly good, then, you know, MI5 can put on like little, I don't know, you get like a bonus scheme where you can, I don't know, pick whoever you want to perv on, and you can use the system to just like, you know, yank one off, that sort of thing. Because I have seen them kind of like follow me abroad, and I've got some people who I've seen in one country suddenly be in another country, and then you think, that must be some sort of MI5, MI6 bonus scheme. You know, like you have like old people going on a little excursion, I don't know what they're called, like in German it's called a Butterfahrt. You kind of like go on a ship to, you know, I don't know, to France or something, where alcohol is really cheap, and then you buy a lot of alcohol, and you've got like a day out for, you know, old people with cheap alcohol. Okay, so that's like the normal way of just dealing with your bored older men. When they're in MI5 and MI6, I guess what the equivalent is of these little excursions is what I've termed wankcursions, you know. So MI6 organizes wankcursions for their, you know, retired personnel, where they can go to fancy places around the world and have a perv and have a, you know, I mean, within possibilities. So, you know, that's what to expect at this level here, okay? Now, at this level, where you have the overall program, you expect a total psychopathic wank, okay? So you do not expect proper science or proper, even like proper human experimentation, as in trying drugs on humans for human benefit. No, do not look for human experimentation, which is normal, because you're in the wrong system, okay? What you expect at this level, when the intelligence agencies do human experimentation, is a psychopathic wank, okay, to the max. And they will have to try to out-psychopath each other. Okay, so what do we expect? Well, what we know that the intelligence agencies are doing is test the effect of microwave weapons. They did that decades ago, okay? So when they did that, they kind of irradiated women in a really ruthless, cruel way. Like they're protesting outside, I think, some US base and get microwaved and then die of cancer. That's kind of like pretty fucking sick in the head, isn't it? Because it's just a bunch of women holding up, you know, protest signs. Ooh, is that so bad? But these guys need to have a power wank. So that's why they microwave the women, even though they're not a threat. If you're normal, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Why would somebody from a US base microwave women who are not a threat? It doesn't make any freaking sense, does it? So you have to be over here. So you already know that that US base, or whatever it was, right, was in deep capture by psychopaths who wanted to yank one off. Simple as, right? You just hear that news story and you know, deep capture. Deep capture by psychos, okay? That's how to understand it. And it goes on and on. So now when you're listening to the victims of the intelligence agencies and it's just about the microwave weapons, well, they know the effect of the microwave weapons because they've been mutilating thousands of people, if not millions of people, for decades. So now they're just using the effect of the microwave weapons to terrify, to mutilate women in a very, very specifically targeted way so that they know exactly what to do. You know, they do know exactly what to do. And they want to harm and cause an effect to essentially just then watch these women be in a panic and then, meanwhile have a hand down their pants, basically. So that's pretty much what I've seen. So when I'm, assaulted, so what would you expect if you're in this department and you've got microwave weapons and you're a bloke who's sick in the head and wants to yank one off, and then you've got these microwave weapons and you can shoot at any woman you want in their bedroom at night. If you were sick in the head, what would you do first? Well, yeah, exactly. They will microwave women's genitals, they will microwave women's breasts, right? You also saw, for example, the Pizzagate paintings where it's essentially young children, mostly young boys, lined up and like kneeling in a tiled room. And if you look at their feet, their naked feet, and they are all red, the feet are red, that's because their feet got whipped or, essentially burnt or, somehow attacked with acid or, whatever to cause pain. Why the feet? Because it's sensitive areas. So the hands, in the olden days when they used to punish children, corporal punishment, they used to hit their hands with a ruler because the hands have got lots of nerves and so have our feet. So you have this like Pizzagate thing, psychopaths having a wank, and you see this painting with the children and their red feet implying some sort of whipping of the feet or, causing pain. And then if you listen to the victims of the intelligence agencies, like myself, I would come and, to an investigator and actually say, my victim statement would be like, yeah, well, I'm shot in the genitals, they microwave me in the rectal area, they shoot really hard into my breasts, right? They're trying to mutilate me in the face, and they are also trying to burn the sole of my feet. Okay, if you're normal, you're like, yeah, but why would an intelligence agency do that? They are there for national security. Yeah, but it's not normal, is it? Okay, then you ignore deep capture and system physics if you're here. And no intelligence agency in the world is now in the normal band. They are all in deep capture. All of them. All of them have psychopaths at the top, people with control files and absolute morons, and a bunch of, deluded and ignorant and corrupt people here. So in that system, if anything normal happens, it's a freaking miracle, most likely just an administrative mistake. Okay? So nothing will be normal that comes out of the intelligence agencies. Okay? Which is why they're so embarrassed, because whatever's leaked about them will be a bunch of, psychopaths, having a tight grip on national security. So, this is how to understand the testimony of the victims, okay? If you detect anything in the victim testimonies that even resembles normality, you know that you're dealing with an actual infiltrator. It's a fake. It's a fake. If what you hear is totally fucked in the head out there and has got sexual components, that's a true takes testimony, most likely. You still have to check it because people, you know, do mimic this stuff. But that's what you're looking for. Okay? So this is now the microwave weapons, but that's not enough because, as I said, you have these microwave weapons, and then they've been known for ages, so they know all the symptoms. So then you have essentially these guys going like this for 40 years. And then how could they possibly one up? Okay, and here I can tell you like the rough sketch of my targeting, which is essentially, you know, starting at the bottom and kind of like percolating up as it got sicker and sicker. And bit by bit, it got like ever more, ever harder and harder and harder. You know, they have to keep it up for half a decade, so I have seen a lot. So at first it starts with just people stalking you, like, ooh, you know, old farts essentially yanking one off because it's like, ooh, it's a new woman. And now we can find out all about her. We can watch her in her bedroom. We can watch her in the, you know, in the bathroom. We can watch her doing all sorts of things. Ooh. So that's going to keep them entertained for what, like a few months? And that's exactly what you see, okay? For a few months, that's all I got. And then it's like, yeah, but, you know, we kind of need to, like, get in there, like, you know, get even more in there, have an even harder wank. So that's like, okay, now let's break into her flat and make her feel it. And that's when it started. It's like, well, they broke into my flat. Ooh, they broke into St. John's College and then took my bodily and access card from my handbag. Ooh, we have to break into her phone. Now we have to listen to all the things that she says to her husband. And da 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 da. Okay, so it's like an extra layer of, oh, we need to get in there, get in there, get in there. And we need to just like destroy, maim, destroy, and have a, you know. Okay, so that's exactly what I observed. But then that's not enough either, because then just a bunch of, you know, old farts just running around stalking is not going to have enough. So they have to then sexualize it. So they stalk you and then they look you up and down. And they stalk you and they wink at you. And they stalk you and they say stuff to you, right? That's an extra level of interaction. And then that's not enough really for them. So it's like, ooh, how can we get even more in there? So then what they do then is, well, you already know everything. You've seen her naked, you've seen her on the loo in the shower, you've seen her having sex, everything. So how can you like get in there anymore? Well, you start to get into her body. You start to infect her. And it's like, ooh, so funny. I have this like skin infection on my legs. And ooh, I seem to be just randomly bursting out in urticaria, even though I'm not allergic to anything in the world. So that means, you know, ooh, we reach the next stage. It's like, ooh, now we have to get into her body. We have to kind of like maim her, control her bodily functions. It's like, and that's a very visible thing when you've got urticaria. It kind of like turns red and so on. And it's like, ooh, we have to do that when she's wearing shorts and see it like, you know, all over her body. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty, we're getting there, right? And then, but that's not enough. And then what happens next? It's like, okay, now we have to get into her like business relationships, you know. So they were trying to get into it at St. John's College, but they couldn't because I was working on my own by the time they, you know, started targeting me. So then in Munich, it's like, ooh, now we have to get into her business and her social life and like kind of interpose ourselves and be like, haha, we're here. And that's exactly what these old farts did. And you're like, wow. I mean, you're trying to actually work on this problem and you've got granddad yanking one off. And you think, what? And back then I was still thinking, there must be a really good explanation for this. There must be. And that's why, you know, it takes ages to come forward, because you're like, I must just miss the pattern. And of course I did miss the pattern. I missed the pattern of deep capture and total fucked in the headness and some weird form of men, you know, knocking one off that I'd never seen before in my life, because I was surrounded by normal men, you know. Okay, so you have that. Okay. And then when they're in the business relationships, like, how can you get into a woman like even more? It's like, ooh, now you start infiltrating her medical appointments. And that's exactly what happened, right? Ooh, now we have to infiltrate her like normal doctors. So we have to like irradiate her heart, make her go to essentially a cardiologist and then perv on that. Okay. and that's done. But that's also not enough. And it's like, ooh, now we have to infiltrate her appointments at the gynecologist. Yeah, I mean, you know, one layer up. And that's what they did. So essentially you've got a standard appointment and you have street theatre from your doctor and you think, what the fuck is this? And then you realize, oh, he's just paid by a bunch of old wankers to put on a show, so to let me know that, ooh, we infiltrated that and we're now watching you there as well. And it's like, okay, like, you know, and then how can they get even more into you? Like, by that stage, you know? It's like, okay, you've already bugged my flat, you've broken into my flat, so, but you have violated my private space when I wasn't there. If they actually came into my flat, that would be a criminal offense. So how could they get into my flat without actually doing that? Well, that was the helicopter. I'm standing on my own rooftop terrace and I'm being mutilated, I'm being maimed by being shot at with a crowd control weapon from a fucking helicopter. That's a military weapon in my own home. I'm outside, but it's my own home. It's like, ooh, now we're in there as well, you know? And it's like, okay, you have now violated my personal space all the way to literally staring me up the vagina, presumably. I mean, heck knows. But, you know, it's like, okay, you know, we're already far up the psycho wank, aren't we? But that's not enough. So how can they possibly get into you even more? Well, now they can get into your brain, like your thoughts, okay? So read your thoughts. And that's exactly when in Munich, the BND started doing exactly that. They started radiating my body, they started cooking my head, making me go for an MRI, injecting something in my arm, presumably chipping me there, putting nanoparticles into me, and then starting reading out my brain. So, ooh, now they're in my thoughts. It's like, okay, granddad, I mean, at some point, you know, do you think you can stop? They can't. They can't. Because it's like an endless loop. It's like more and more and more and more, you know, like harder and harder. Oof, okay, so then you kind of map my brain in Munich. But that's not enough. So how can you like get into a woman's life even more? And that's when I moved to here to Switzerland, and then they started shooting into my body every hour of every day. So they actually interact with you. They actually shoot into your vagina, causing a reaction. They shoot into your breasts. They shoot into your face. They bruise you up. They microwave your rectum. Okay, it's like, that's, you know, getting into that as well. So I had a year of that, but it's like, that's not enough for granddad, because they want an even harder and harder wank, essentially. So how could they possibly top it? And by this stage, this is, if you think it has got any relation to national security, by now you should be very confused. Because I don't think there's any situation on planet Earth that requires the military or the intelligence agencies to microwave a woman's vagina for national security. It's, I can't think of, you know, I mean, if you can think of something, answers on a postcard, right? But I think in most cases, in the history of mankind, that was never taught at defense colleges for a reason, right? Okay. So we have that, right? And then that's not enough for granddad. So when they have literally like stared up women's vaginas, you know, watched them have sex. Oh, by the way, in Munich, they also had to comment on my sex life. So essentially you have intercourse and then you go out and after that you hear comments about it. So that granddad gives you a live commentary, you know, like that was one step up. But they've done that, okay, and they got bored. And then, oh yes, they also had this thing of training dogs and eventually, you know, having trained dogs to lick me between the legs. Okay, so that was like one up, you know, just like staring at me at the gynecologist is not enough. We need to somehow simulate oral sex in a way that we can't get arrested. So we can't do it, so a dog has to do it. Wow. Like, freaking fucking wow. Like, the BND actually does that. You've got people in Pullach who train dogs to do that? You know, if that's not the sign that you should just bomb the BND into the ground, what is? So anyway, okay. So you have that, and now we're here where you had everything. You had Grandad like, watch me have sex, Grandad comments, and dog simulating oral sex. You have, you know, break-ins. My relationships have been commented on. My phone calls are being commented on. Phone calls are blocked. My businesses are destroyed. My social life is commented on. My family and my friends have been attacked. My best friend's mom was nearly killed by lightning on a bright day in the middle of the city. Lightning, as in laser guided energy. Okay. Manufactured by Applied Energetics, was it? Okay, so here we are. And then how could Grandad possibly get into me even more, right? How can old wankers at the intelligence agency mutilate a woman even more when they have spent an entire year shooting into her body parts and microwaving the sole of her feet every morning to force her to wake up when they want? It's like, okay, now we have to get into her head, and she's also an academic or a scientist, so her head is kind of like really important. So now it's about mutilation. So shots into my heart, mutilating me, shots into my spine, moving muscles, also moving, essentially, that's really freakish, but essentially moving the muscles in your eye so that your eye is pulled. So essentially one eye is normal and one eye is artificially pulled out of alignment. They can do that too, and they do that to women. Why? Because it's like mutilating a woman, making her look funny, like making her look deformed. So they did that as well. It's like, yeah, you know, one step up. And now it's about getting into her brain and remote controlling her brain. So that's where the smart dust comes in. You essentially get something injected, it gets into your brain, and now we control pain sensation. We can control you whenever we want to. Okay, so that's the stage where I'm at. So I'm out, I'm trying to essentially just, you know, talk to my husband, and I've got weird pains in my head, weird pains all around me, you know, a pulling on the back of my head, funny sort of thing. A guy comes close to me with a mobile phone, and I just feel like, ooh, what's going on with my head? My head is burning, pulling, aching, weirdly, like I've never felt before. Well, that's radiation combined with nanotech. So now they're inside my brain, and it's like Grandad going like this. I mean, they must get sore at some point, right? But, you know, it never stops. So the ultimate wank is to essentially mutilate a woman to death and then watch her die. So that's what I'm on, right? All of this is essentially one big, every victim you see, this is not national security, this is not normal, and most importantly, it is also not human experimentation, because these people know exactly what they're doing. This is a psycho wank. And that's why the intelligence agencies are so embarrassed. Because if it turned out that they're running death camps just to yank one off, how will that look in court? Right? Because that's very much like Fred and Rose West, isn't it? Meaning like incarceration for life. And that's what we're dealing with. Okay, so now all investigators, I gave you now in greatest detail the example of my case. Please get on the case, listen to the victims, take them seriously and analyze whatever they say, not under the normal category, but please either in the weaponized moron shenanigans or the psycho wank category. That's the only way to understand the evidence, right? I have now seen many victims, you know, report stuff like that, and whatever is really whacked out and is a sexual component, I think that's when you're on the right path. Okay, so this is it. These are the instructions. Thank you for listening, and have fun during the bounty hunt and the head hunt. We really need you investigators. Please help us have these psychopaths shut down. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.